everybody, and welcome to Nanny Talks on this beautiful clouded over day. Yeah, it's not very pretty outside. I actually am not looking forward to going outside, which I have to do in 1 hour, so I'd better finish this one up quickly. I'll get straight to the point. I owe you guys a video about Persona 5, which I announced on my blog a long time ago, but I had a hard drive crash, and I lost some of the data that I needed to complete the video, and I'm in the process of recovering it, but I'm actually worried that I might not be able to finish the video before the end of the month, which is really stupid because I want to put out at least one video a month at very least. So I was thinking to myself, what could I do? And in the process, I decided, why not just give you guys a non-scripted video where I also talk about Persona 5, albeit in a little bit different sense. So, as you can probably see in the title, this video is about why Persona 5 is not my favorite Persona game. And right away, I want to make it certain this is not about Persona 5 not being a good Persona game. Not at all. That's why it's not, the title is not why Persona 5 isn't the best Persona game, but it's about why Persona 5 is not my favorite Persona game. Basically, if you've seen my video about review scores, you know that I actually don't think that such a thing as objectively judging a video game unless there's some very, very, very grave flaws in it. I don't believe in review scores or the idea that there's something like objective fun in a game, because everyone's preferences are different, everyone's needs are different, and that's not just true for video games, it's true for all sorts of media. So you'll never see me claim that anything is the best thing ever, because that's obviously not something that's in my authority to claim. However, what I can say is that Persona 5, while it is, in a technical way, Persona 5 is absolutely stunning. It does so many things that the series really needed. It does so many things that the series was really craving for. It has, the framework of a game that I was supposed to love. And I do love it, but why is it that I don't love it as much as I thought I would? And that's something I want to talk about today. Why don't I love Persona 5 as much as I love Persona 4, which is still my favorite Persona game? And I'm not saying that Persona 4 is the best Persona game ever. That would be absolutely stupid, especially because I have found people who like any of the numbered Persona games. There's people who think Persona 1 is the best Persona game. There's people who think Persona 2 is the best Persona game. There's people who think Persona 3 is the best game, Persona 4, and Persona 5, of course. But recently I saw a claim on a video about the Weiß Schwarz. If you don't know Weiß Schwarz, it's a trading card game that uses franchised characters from different franchises on it, and I play that game. And I watched a video about the Persona 5 set that recently released for this game. And the host of the video claimed something that I really didn't agree with. He said that half of the fan base agrees that Persona 5 is the best Persona game ever. And that's not something I really see reflected in the fan base at all. I see a lot of love for the game, a lot of very well-deserved love. But I don't see people really, maybe it's just my confirmation bias, because personally I don't feel that way. But I don't see people praising the game as the best game ever in the series. And I'm sorry if I have a lisp in there, because I'm trying to speak clearly. And anyway, why is it that I feel this way? Why is it that when I see somebody praising this game to heavens high, I immediately have a but in my thoughts? But it is, but I don't feel that way, but. And I've thought long and hard about it. I even wrote some stuff about it on my Tumblr. And all in all, it has to do with the writing. Everything else about the game is perfection. But every time in the game I saw something that was really amazing, a great idea, I didn't think, wow, this is great in this game, but I thought, wow, this would have been great in Persona 4. And that really gave me to think, why was it that I still feel all this powerful emotion whenever I see the story of Persona 4 and the characters of Persona 4, and even Persona 3 to some extent, but I don't get quite the same amount of emotion out of Persona 5. And that was when it hit me that it might actually be because I put too high expectations in precisely this aspect of the game, by which I mean its ability to make me feel emotions. And there's a good reason for that. In a fairly, well, not early, but an interview long before the game released with the game's director, Hashino Katsuya, he said something that stuck on my mind and stuck on it hard, and that pretty much determined the way I ended up processing the game when I played it, the way I perceived it. And that was, he said, that with Persona 5, he would be trying to evoke real emotions in the player. Real, powerful emotions. He would be trying to make the player cry. And I was like, wow, that sounds awesome, because I already cried at Persona 3, I cried at Persona 4, but he made it sound like, no, these games were not meant to make you cry. Persona 5 is the one that is meant to make you cry. So in my mind, I took that to mean that Persona 5 was going to be this emotional bomb of raw human relation, this raw, powerful idea of seeing the misery of people and relating to it. So I put these very, very high expectations in the writing of the game. I expected it to make me cry. I wanted it to make me cry, to make me feel, to make me laugh, to make me just feel like I'm right there. And maybe precisely because I was waiting and waiting for the moment that it really hits me as I played the game, I did not end up getting that moment because I was too prepared for it. And as a result of that, as a result of Hashino saying this, making these promises, I ended up not actually feeling what he wanted, because I was not surprised by anything that happened, because I expected bigger and better things. And I think it also has to do with a lot of things that were done differently from the games that actually made me cry, which are, to some extent, Persona 2, Persona 3, and Persona 4. Like, I cried at Persona Q, I cried at Persona 4 Arena, I cried at Persona 4 Dancing All Night. So, even the spin-offs. But the thing is, the spin-offs did not promise me anything. I went into those without premises, but Persona 5 promised me, you are going to cry. And it didn't happen. And I waited and waited. And it just didn't happen. Like, I felt things. I definitely felt things. I felt endearment for some of the characters, a lot of the characters. But I think it never actually went. I felt endearment, and I felt some amount of shame and shock at, the final dungeon, the revelations about what is causing the final dungeon to exist, and what exactly the evil deity in this game, because of course there's an evil deity in it. It's Persona, of course there's a deity representing human emotions and our human collective unconscious. That's a given. But when I found out what that deity represents, that was when it really hit me hard. That was when I really felt, I did not cry. It was not the sort of emotion I expected. But what I felt was shame. Shame for not standing on my own 2 feet and deciding my own life. Shame for not taking actions to change things. Because that is something the game did really well. Because that is something it did much better than Persona 4. With Persona 4, it just felt like, these 8 kids here learned how to face reality, but the rest of Inaba is still shitty, and they are not going to change, and these NPCs are just going to remain as NPCs, gossiping, stupid NPCs who will never learn how life works. But with Persona 5, I actually felt like, no, these kids are going to go out, and they are going to slap everybody, all of these NPCs in the face and tell them you can't live your life like that. You have to not only face reality and face the complexities of reality, but you have to actually do something for your own life. that is something Persona 5 did great. This is something Persona 5 did better than all of the other games. But at the same time, it failed to make me emote. And I think that's due to how the arcs of the characters were handled. And it's not like the characters aren't good, because they are very good. In some respects, they are a lot better than Persona 3's and Persona 4's characters. But the game also fell into a trap that I was very afraid it would fall into, and that's the fact that they again went with not only 8, but technically 9 playable characters to be developed. And that was a mistake. And I don't think it was anything short of a terrible mistake. Persona 3 had this problem really, like, to a huge extent. By the end of Persona 3, before any of the spin-offs happened, I looked at the screen and I was like, oh, I like these characters, but I don't think I actually know where any of those are going now. I don't know what any of them are going to do with their lives now. And I don't know if I actually care about what any of them are going to do with their lives now. Because I was not given the time to actually see what these characters are like in a regular situation. I was not given the time to see what they are like when just being normal kids. Like, there was some scenes, but there wasn't enough of it. And Persona 4 avoided this issue by, like, giving all of the kids a dungeon, having a lot of time where the kids just interact as kids, where the kids just are themselves without even the mothers even being mentioned. And that was a great advantage that Persona 4 had, that Persona 3 didn't have. That actually brought the character writing almost back to the standards of Persona 2, which had very high standards for character writing. But at the same time, Persona 4 also relied on a lot of stereotypes that Persona 3 didn't rely on, and that kind of took away from that. The problem here is Persona 5 did away with a lot of the stuff that Persona 4 did right. Like, they tried to involve the party members in the dungeons directly, but in the end, it actually had the opposite effect of what was intended. Instead of actually giving the characters more focus for us to look at them, it took away from our focus of them, because we were focusing on the enemy instead. We were focusing on the actual master of the dungeon, and we're not taking the time to actually think a lot about the characters that recently joined our party beyond the scene where they actually gained the persona potential. And after that, yeah, we still have the social links, or confidants as they are called in this game. But again, not everybody does the social links. That was the same thing with Persona 4. Not everybody did Rize's social link. Not everybody did Yukiko's social link. Not everybody did... everybody did Yosuke's social link because it was the easiest. But not everybody did Kanji's social link. And so many people missed out on Naruto's. And this is the same problem we have here in Persona 5. I don't know a thing about Haru Okumura. I don't know a thing about her because... the game did not give her any chance to shine for herself. She was overshadowed by Morgana. She was overshadowed by her own father. And by the time I was able to do her social link, the game was almost done. And I was like, okay, I come out of this game and I don't know who you are. And that should not have happened. I know who Makoto is, but I still felt like I was missing some pieces with her. The characters I got the best grasp on in the end of the game were Anne, Ryuji, Yusuke, and of course Futaba, because Futaba had her own dungeon. So Futaba fell a lot in a very similar space as Naoto from Persona 4, because she has her own dungeon. Her own dungeon is initiated by her own actions, and her social link is initiated very late. But despite that, you still got a good grasp on her personality because of how her arc was handled. Futaba's arc was handled amazingly well. She's a great character. She was honestly one of the people I felt a lot of emotion for. She was really the one part where I felt, yes, I'm about ready to cry. So, yeah, kudos on Futaba. But for the rest of the party, I really did not feel the strong involvement at all. And it's like, I feel that the party should have been smaller. I don't want to get rid of any of the characters, not even Haru, because they were all really nice people, really nice characters. But it's too many. There were just too many of them. And I really wish they had stuck with a smaller party of 5 to 6 people for this game. It would have fit better with the Phantom Thief theme. It would have given more time to develop the individual characters. And I really don't see any need why this game needed to have 9 playable characters. I don't see the reason for it. It feels just like, yeah, because we had 8 playable characters in Persona 4, we need 9 in this. It's the law. And it didn't feel like a good choice. And this seems to be something that the Persona team does not seem to understand, that you should not have that many characters on screen at any given time. It's the same problem they had with Persona Q. I think this is something that can be avoided. Another thing that could have been avoided was the Morgana's arc moving as slowly as it did. They overdid it with trying to trick the player into thinking that Morgana was just the same character as Teddy. They should not have done that, because you know what the result was of trying to trick us into thinking that Morgana is the same character as Teddy? That I thought of him as the same character as Teddy for most of the game. That should not have happened. And by the time it came out, no, Morgana has completely different backstory and completely different motivations, and everything about how this character works is different, which I already thought. By the time the game made this clear, the comparison to Teddy was so firmly cemented in my mind that I couldn't separate it from the character anymore. And that was really detrimental to my enjoyment of Morgana as his own character. And it was a reference taken too far. By the time that the game was over, I felt like Morgana's arc has not actually started yet, because the entire game spent the time I had with the character was spent on trying to trick me into thinking that he's Teddy, instead of actually starting his arc. And it feels like his arc is only really going to start in the spin-offs, which are about to happen now, because it sure as hell did not actually start in the game. Another issue I had with the game was how the multiple endings worked, because this was an issue I already had with Persona 3. Basically in Persona 3, in the very beginning of the game, it already tells you have to take responsibility for your own actions, and then was like, so does that mean that my actions actually have an actual effect on the outcome of the game? Nope. There's one single solitary moment with a telegraphed bad ending that you can possibly get if you really want to, but that's all. You can be an asshole to everyone in the game as long as you want. It will not have any effect on the outcome. And Persona 4 actually did that better. And Persona 4 still had this problem that you can be an asshole for the entirety of the game and nothing is going to change, but at least it had one stretch towards the end of the game, which I really loved, where you had to think about what you need to do. You had to consider how to do things. You had to think about what has happened so far, and you had to act in accordance with the themes of the game. Otherwise, you're going to be thrown into one of a variety of different scenarios, bad-end scenarios that all gave you a sense of emptiness, a sense that something did not work out and you could have done this better. And this was something that made you feel sorry for what you did. And that was something I really appreciated about Persona 4, even though it still had the issue that you could just chalk ass through the whole remaining game and nobody was ever going to care or hold you responsible for this. And with Persona 5, I was so disappointed because Hashino outright said it was his goal to make players feel responsible for the endings that they got. And that made me so happy. And in the end of the game, it just was the same story as Persona 3. A bad ending that was telegraphed to the point that you cannot get it until you want to get it. Because you would need to really just button mash X if you wanted to get this bad ending on accident, because there is no way in hell anybody could possibly get this bad ending knowing what happened in the game. And it just was so disappointing for me because I did not feel responsible for getting the good ending. I did not feel responsible for doing things right. I just felt like, yes, I understood how the game works. Cookie for me. Those were the biggest issues I had with the game. And I see a theme through them. The theme is I expected them to do new things, do very different things from what the previous games did. But instead, they stuck with the pattern of the previous games. And that might be why Persona 4 is still my favorite game, because Persona 4 might be the game that set a lot of these patterns. But at least Persona 4 did a lot of its own thing in doing so. It did not rely on the patterns set by Persona 3. It had some completely different ideas, like, yes, we have separate dungeons, and those dungeons represent our characters, and our characters' arcs will be handled like this, and it did not feel like Persona 5 was really trying to surprise me. It felt like Persona 5 was treading safe ground in some respects. And that made me sad, because with the themes of the game, this game should not have been treading safe ground. I hear people call it innovative, and in some respects it truly is. But in many respects, it just felt like Hashino, and it was Hashino's final Persona game, and Hashino was basically just doing his final exam. He was taking everything he learned from making the previous Persona games that he was heading, and also the Persona games that came before the ones that he made, and he was trying to do his magnum opus by taking the best parts of everything that made the previous Persona games great and making a great Persona games from those. But he did not actually do anything new with those ideas, anything surprising, anything that took me really off guard and made me reconsider what Persona means, make me reconsider what Persona is about. Not in the way that Persona 4 did, because Persona 4 really made me reconsider a lot of things about the series after I'd already played Persona 3. And yeah, that's why I think that I don't love this game as much as I should. I don't love this game as much as I could. And basically, that just gives me even higher expectations for Persona 6. But I'm also afraid of having that high expectations, because not only is Persona 6 going to have a different director, because, as I said, Hashino quit, but that might just be the right thing, because the next director means fresh ideas, that means fresh takes on the franchise, which might just do the surprises that I expect to get. But yeah, basically, Persona 5 is a great game. It's the pinnacle of the Persona series so far, and it is not my favorite Persona game. That's still Persona 4. It's not even one of my favorite 3 Persona games, because Persona 4, Persona 3, and Persona 2 have a beat there. And it makes me kind of sad that it is like this, but this is just the way I feel, and I cannot deny that to myself. Maybe I'm going to feel differently in the future, but for now, this is the way I feel about the game. And that's just how it's gonna be. I'm gonna replay it, I'm gonna see if my opinion changes. But for now, Persona 4 is still where it's at for me.